Hey everyone, welcome to Build Your SaaS. This is the behind-the-scenes story of building a web app in 2020. I'm John Buda, a software engineer.
And I'm Justin Jackson. I do product and marketing. Follow along as we build Transistor.fm Summer Edition. Midsummer update, John.
Midsummer Pandemic 2020 edition. How's it going? It's been a while. It's been a month? I don't know.
Yeah.
Since we.
Yeah, it's been a month. We were just joking offline that we haven't really taken a lot of time off.
Not really. Not so much from Transistor. I know you took a break from social media.
Yeah.
I was never really super active. I did delete my Facebook account.
Oh, good.
That felt nice. Don't miss it one bit.
Was that after you were watching the stuff with Congress? You're like, that's it, Zach?
This was like well over a month ago.
It is amazing how much brain space that stuff can take.
I wasn't even really using it. I was just like, it felt good to just get rid of it. It's like cleaning out your house or spring cleaning. You're like, I don't wear this shirt anymore.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't sparking joy for you anymore.
No, it hasn't for years. So it's just like, it's just a stream of an anxiety stream.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, even not recording the podcast, it is sometimes good to not do things. Like I have felt like I've had more just time to enjoy the summer. Like I'm going to the beach, going mountain biking, just kind of taking it easy. And, but on the other hand, I'm always conflicted because it feels like I need some time away. But then there's this buildup of, like things I want to talk to you about or just things in my head. And I mean, you and I were talking before this, like there was obviously a buildup, like I think we both were kind of like, oh, wow, like we got to talk about this and what are we going to do about this? And, you can't have too much time elapse, it feels like.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were just setting up and you sort of forgot how to even record the podcast. Right?
That's how you know.
What apps do I open in what order and what?
Yeah, what is this? How does this work? Well, one thing I think that will be helpful for our listeners is as I've been talking to other people who are starting a SaaS, mostly, bootstrap founders, one or two founders. One thing I've noticed is they basically, if you're bootstrapping a SaaS, you're probably going to need more trials than you think. And I don't know if you can remember, like when you were freelancing, how many leads did you get every month?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know the number, but it was certainly more than I could take on, but also I sort of weeded them out beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, I always felt like I was lucky if I got, a handful of inquiries, right?
Yeah.
And then if you convert, and when you're freelancing, how many clients would you take at a time? Like maybe one or two?
Probably, yeah, one or two. I don't think I ever tried to do more than that.
There's a little bit of a paradigm shift. I know a lot of folks who are, bootstrapping a SaaS or starting a SaaS. Their business experience might be, the only experience they might have is consulting or freelancing. And, when you're consulting or freelancing, you want kind of a healthy number of leads coming in because you know that you're going to need to, convert maybe roughly 25% of those or something, or 30%.
Yeah.
And you convert 30% of those leads and you'll probably have enough work, right? And if you don't have any new leads for a few months, you might be worried. You might be like, I kind of need something else. But it's not uncommon, during the summer months, for example, to not have any leads, and you just kind of plan for that in your year.
Yeah, right.
But SaaS is a lot different mostly because the price points are smaller, right? So if you're selling something at $19 a month or $39 a month or $99 a month, even let's say $299 a month, the nature of the business is you're going to need way more folks kind of coming in every day to, with some interest.
Yeah. Contracting is way different. I mean, you're going to get maybe you land one client and it's a $10,000 contract or something.
Yeah. And you know what else is different is you are willing to put in a lot of effort for those clients, right? So you might, I mean, not everyone does this, but, you might be willing to go to a few meetups and, talk to some people and then do a coffee meeting and then, do an initial, a little bit of initial work and then add a bigger contract later. There's kind of this like build up that is expected. Or it might be, they email you and you email them back and then you do a phone call and then, you do an estimate.
Yeah. But even then, it doesn't even end there when you get the actual contract. I mean, you're in contact with that client all the time.
Exactly. And so I was trying to quantify this on Twitter. I said the biggest problem I see for SaaS who target SMBs, small, medium businesses, is they're not getting enough trials. You'll probably need more than you think. Now, the disclaimer here is that every product is different. Every product category is different. Your price points, will affect this. Your cost to acquire a customer will affect this. Credit card up front, all that stuff. But most of the founders I've talked to, for these tweets, I pinged 3 or 4 of my friends who have SaaS businesses, and generally it's the same pattern. It wasn't until they hit about 200 to 300 trials per month that they felt like they were finally kind of making it work. It was like that's when they got to ramen profitable. And, I think for most folks in the US, ramen profitable is probably around 10K MRR per founder.
Mm-hmm.
And, you and I said a pretty good business would be 25K MRR per founder. Because, if like a software developer in the United States, it's pretty easy for them to make $200,000 a year. I shouldn't say easy, but that's not uncommon.
Yeah, senior level. Yeah,
senior level. And so at 25K MRR per month, if you have very low expenses, and after you've paid your payroll and your server costs and everything, you could probably do about $200,000 a year in salary.
Yeah.
And so if you want to hit that number and your product is priced, let's say $39 to $99 per month, and you're asking for a credit card up front, which I do recommend. It's not always true, but in most cases, especially if you want to prove demand, you want to have credit card up front. And then if you get a conversion rate from trial to paid that's between 40 and 60%, you're going to need hundreds of trials per month to kind of ratchet up to 10K MRR and then beyond. And you won't get that right out of the gate, but I think what I'm seeing is folks who have done consulting in the past, and now they've been working on their SaaS for 6 months or a year, and they're getting like 3 to 5 trials a month. And that's just that in every case I've seen, especially if you're targeting SMBs at a lowish price point, anything below $1,000 a month, you're going to need more trials. And yeah, I think it's worth mentioning just because a lot of this is one of those things that I never knew what to expect. Like what's good, what's bad, what should I, and whenever you give numbers publicly, you're always, and I'll paste this tweet in the show notes, but there's people immediately that go, wow, wait a second. If it's, if you're doing this, you're doing fine. And my whole point is, that, yes, there's a lot of variables, but just to give you a ballpark, I think most founders, if you're a single founder or you're dual founders, you're probably going to want 200 to 300 trials per month at least. And for us personally, when we hit 200 trials per month, that's when I went full time. Mm-hmm. And then I think actually that's a good question. Let's look at because you went full time in August.
Yeah.
So August, we were doing 300 trials per month. And it's gone kind of up and down since then, but we probably average 400 trials per month right now. I talked to another friend who has a higher price point than us, and they're doing 250 trials per month. I talked to someone else has a longer running company than we do and a lower price point, and they're doing 500 to 600 trials per month.
Okay.
And so those are just numbers, but I think if you're building a SaaS, my worry is if you're just trying to nurture in the same way that you did when you were consulting, you're like talking to these people every day and you're just going to get your heart broken because.
Yeah, probably. But there's probably also, if you're doing that many trials, I'm wondering if there's a certain amount of effort you can put into improving the percentage of people that stay, right? Without too much effort and trying to figure out what that is. Instead of spending the marketing on finding new trials or, putting effort into getting new trials, maybe put a little more effort towards keeping the trials you already have and making sure they don't switch to another competitor or just have questions or get confused, stuff like that.
Totally. Ben Ornstein's got this tweet from yesterday. He says, seems like the more entrepreneurial experience someone has, the more they focus on retention over acquisition.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of that, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had people who wanted to leave or tried to leave or and we just talk.
We don't let them.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't leave. Sorry.
When they hit cancel, we just go, you can't leave.
You have to call this phone number and it goes to a blank number. It goes nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, we tell them to send a DNA sample and the last 3 years of their tax returns.
And then we fax it to them, and they fax it to us, and then we'll send them a written letter in 6 to 8 weeks.
That they have to sign and then get back to us.
Classic strategy.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, so I think you're right. This is kind of in that ramping up period, and again, when we started, we launched in August, we had 75 trials that month. And then the next month we only had 70. And then the next month we only had 63. But, and then it started to kind of build up from there. You get to just around 100 and then you get to 200 and eventually you're going to hit a ceiling, right?
Yeah. Right.
Unless there's some levers you can pull to increase growth. And if the market is so big that there's just tons and tons of room to grow, right? Then you can increase the number of trials you get every month. And there's also a ceiling in terms of how much you can handle, right?
Right.
When you're ramping up, I think if you're thinking, I want to have a nice little business, nice little SaaS business that's bringing in, let's say, 20 to 50 and up in MRR every month, that's hundreds of trials. And if you're really trying to nurture just a few people and just trying to convert a few people, maybe you can do that at the beginning for a few months, but I'd hope by, let's say, the 6-month period, after some consistent effort, you should have hundreds of trials coming in. And this is, I think, this is kind of one of those bellwethers. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
The leading sheep or flock with a bell on its neck. An indicator or predictor of something, yeah. So this is a good bellwether of whether you're on the right track. Because if you're not seeing those trials, that could mean there's just not a lot of demand for your product category. It could mean that maybe there's something wrong with your product and marketing. But my sense, especially from the folks that I'm, trying to help out, my sense is in most cases, they're just in a category that doesn't have a lot of demand. And they're trying to nurture these like very niche leads. And it's just not going to give them the volume they need to, have hundreds of trials coming in. And then if your credit card up front, you're converting hopefully 40 to 60% of those or more even. And getting up to that number where even with some churn, you've got a healthy amount of MRR every month.
Yeah.
And every little lever you pull helps. But I was trying to think, is there a word for, at the beginning, when a customer signs up and they immediately start asking us about stats?
You mean as in analytics?
Yeah. So they sign up, they've had their podcast for a couple weeks, and they start asking us about their numbers. Like, hey, how come I'm not seeing, average, subscribers yet? Or,
yeah.
I had 10 downloads the first day, but now I only have 5. And there's this phenomenon when the numbers are low, they really don't mean much. It's not until you get into if you're in single or double digit numbers, it's just like one person, if you had 10 listeners and one person decides to quit listening, well, that's going to be a huge percentage of your overall listenership, but it probably doesn't matter at that point because it's not until you get into the thousands of listeners that those trends become meaningful.
Right. I don't know if there's a word for that.
But you know what I'm talking about,
There's
right?
probably something within statistics. There's probably some term for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like your sample size is low, but there's just this other thing, which is, and I think everyone's fallen prey to this. It's like, you launch a new website or something and you go, whoa, my numbers are up 3,000% from yesterday to today. And then the next day after that, they're down 20,000%. It's like, okay, well, you don't need to worry at that point. None of that is significant yet. And, in podcasting, really, you can't get any significance out of the numbers until you're in the hundreds, but likely to the thousands of downloads. That's when, and over months of time, right? And there's something of this effect here as well, meaning you could have 5 trials and then convert 3 of them and go, yes, this is it. I got something here. But if 2 of those people churn in a given month, which is statistically possible, you know what I mean? This is why we need a stats person on the line right now, because the chances of 2 people canceling in a month are very high, whether you only have 10 subscribers or, you know what I mean? It's just very likely that if 2 people might decide, well, I'm going to cancel. And that could, that obviously, if you only have a few customers, that feels bad at the beginning.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is that the whole point with something like SaaS is that you're going to have hundreds, but really thousands of customers. And if lightning strikes one day and you have 5 people cancel, which could happen at any day, regardless of the sample size.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've had days like that.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of take a step back and look at the bigger picture and say, oh, well, 10 people canceled today, but in the grand scheme of things, we actually had like hundreds of trials. So it's kind of not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And I want to say your risk tolerance, but, once you get to our stage or ConvertKit stage, that's even like, I look at ConvertKits, like how many customers they lose every day. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It would be painful for us to lose that many. But for Nathan, he's probably just like, yeah, well, this is just the way the business runs. Like at this scale, losing thousands of customers every year is not a big deal. It's just like, that's how it goes. But if you're only able to bring in 5 trials a month and you're losing, in a given month, you lose 2 or 3 people, it's just it hurts more.
Yeah.
And so you've got to get to a scale where the model works, meaning software as a service, as a business model, works when you have, in most cases, thousands of subscribers. And that's whether you're bootstrapping, that's whether you're venture funded, whatever, and obviously, if you have way more employees and way more funding, you need thousands more customers. But in general, there's like this certain floor you have to hit. It doesn't matter if you're bootstrapping or you're venture funded, you've got to hit this certain number. And my best guess is that's, hundreds of trials every month, and it goes up from there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hopefully that's helpful to people that are looking for some kind of number. You wanted to talk about this analytics thing. What was kind of on your mind there?
Yeah, so we've had analytics, for a while, obviously, and as we've grown, they become kind of more and more cumbersome to deal with as far as performance of analytics. Right? It's sort of a intensive process to calculate analytics and display them in a meaningful way to customers, and sort of give you, a time series data and show charts. And
yeah, which is why, like, when people are starting companies, if you're trying to bootstrap like something that requires a lot of data tracking, people often warn you against it. Like,
right?
Don't get into that because it's expensive.
Yeah, and we're not necessarily an analytics company, although I guess you could take that viewpoint. But they are a big part of the app and a big part of, the value that customers get out of Transistor, right, is seeing how well their podcast is doing over time and comparing it to other episodes and all this stuff. Recently, I don't know, well, I guess the last several months, it's been ongoing for a while, right, where the way the analytics were written, the way the database was kind of laid out from the start worked fine for a long time. But as we've grown and, gotten into the tens of millions of downloads and all that stuff, it just hasn't necessarily scaled well. And I think I don't think I would have been able to build it a different way had, knowing what I knew at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And at least over the past month, it's just kind of gotten worse and worse, where we have these background jobs that are sort of aggregating data down into the day time frame, right? We have downloads that come in constantly, like tens and tens of thousands a day. Mm-hmm. Those have to get aggregated down and so we can say, like, this episode got 25 downloads on this day, and this other episode got 50 downloads on this day, and then this episode got 10 downloads from Apple Podcasts and 15 from Overcast, right? And those are all different entries. And it was just getting cumbersome, and I was basically just applying like Band-Aids to this thing and hoping it would last. But I'd have to like routinely go back and check our background jobs to see that they hadn't stacked up. And once in a while, we'd have these issues where the database would just be doing way too many things at once, and it would just completely, like, all the database requests would just get like queued up in the queue system within Postgres, right? So people's requests were just super slow. We get a lot of support requests that are like, "Hey, the dashboard isn't working. I can't log in, or I can't do this or that."
Oh, like it would lock the whole app.
Well, yeah, it's just the database is overwhelmed trying to get through all the requests that have sort of built up. that the other requests for like looking up your user via your email address is just like in the queue somewhere and times out.
Yeah.
Right.
And emotionally, like this is affecting you emotionally. Like you're frustrated.
Yeah. It's just a huge amount of stress that I just constantly think about, like, when is it going to like, all right, it's fine. It's fine for now. It's fine for like a while. When's it going to pile up? When's it going to be a problem?
Yeah.
And it just kept happening to the point where I was like, looking into all these other solutions, trying to think about different ways to do it. And looking at these services that are like hundreds to thousands of dollars a month to handle these massive analytics databases, which, looking at ours, it's not that big compared to like what other people are doing at all. It's not huge.
Owning and running a SaaS is so much like owning a house. Like there's just like, it's like, something goes wrong with your plumbing and you like kind of fix it one time, like, okay. And you're just like, it's in the back of your mind, like, oh, I hope that doesn't like start leaking again. And then it starts leaking. You're like, fucking shit. Like, damn it. God damn it. Fucking. Duh. And then because just the smallest thing can then trigger.
And then you hire a plumber and you throw money at the problem.
Yeah. Then you hire the plumber and the plumber goes, well, to fix this, you're gonna have to redo all the pipes, man. This is gonna be at least $20,000. And then you're like, oh, God damn it. And
so I talked to a couple friends and they were like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. Maybe, you can look into this, or there's this service, but it's going to, most of the things that I was looking into at the time were going to completely change how we handled analytics, how the data was stored, how it was processed, which maybe would have future-proofed things a little more, but probably would have been really expensive. It was technology I didn't know, so it would have been taking a while to finish. But at the same time, I'm still trying to, patch it and fix it, and just getting frustrated. And like, I sort of reached my limit of knowledge of Postgres in the way we were using it. And so I think you had mentioned, maybe you should email these two people, a couple different people.
Yeah.
One of whom was Jack Ellis, who is the co-founder of Fathom Analytics.
Yeah. I was like, I know someone who has experience with analytics.
And like when you said that, I was like, that is actually a great idea, because they're an analytics company, right? That's what they do. I'm sure they run into this problem.
And the other thing about Jack is like, some people I could think of had like enterprise experience, and they'd be like, well, you just like fire up Big Blue and then you just revert, and you got to shard
you got to pay for an Oracle database, and it's $200K.
I was like, I'll bet Jack has figured out something progressive that works at our scale.
Yeah. And so I emailed him and just kind of explained what I was going through and what we were dealing with. And I think the next day I had a call with him. Yeah, I just talked to him. I hadn't talked to him before. I mean, I know his name, and I know of, you know of him, and they support our podcast, and they use Transistor.
Yeah.
We use Fathom.
Yeah.
And is the nicest guy ever. And so we had a call and talked for like an hour and a half.
Nice.
And he shared his screen and was like going through code, right? Going through Fathom code and showing me how they deal with processing incoming page views, right? Their system is really the same as ours. I mean, when you get down to it, right? They deal with page views for a site, and we would deal with downloads for a podcast and podcast episodes.
Yeah.
So they're processing incoming page views all the time, and we're processing downloads all the time. And so he just sort of walked me through his thought process of how they deal with this stuff, how they batch things together and aggregate data. It just sort of clicked and made a lot of sense, like how he thought about things. And they're in the process of changing things again, because they're growing a lot. Their analytics are huge, right? They deal with a much bigger problem than we do. So they have to sort of like build a version 3 or whatever of something.
Yeah.
But he was explaining how they currently do it, and it's a very similar setup to what we have. It just was so nice to get out of my own headspace and me thinking about this stuff the same way over and over, and talk to someone who kind of had a slightly different perspective on how to do it. And then within a week, I had sort of like fixed everything and reworked, how we handle backlogs of downloads coming in and how we batch them together in the background. And
and oh my God, like you showed me that.
Reorganize some of the table, yeah.
You showed me that graph from AWS and...
Yeah, it's like, can you tell me when we deployed the updates? And it was like this just significant drop in everything in Postgres.
It's like everything gets calm. It's like everything was crazy, and then it was these frantic up and downs every hour as we compile data, and then like after this, it's just like this smooth line. It's like smooth water. Yeah, I mean that's huge. Getting out of your own head, and
to me, that's like the disadvantage of having a small team like us, right? Where I'm the only engineer, so there's not really anyone to sort of like talk to about the stuff necessarily, or like just bounce ideas off of.
Yeah.
So I think if you're in our position and you have a small team and there's like one main engineer, probably really beneficial to have a network of people you can reach out to, just for like mentorship or just, I don't know, just to talk about engineering problems, like
this is the unfair advantage, is who you know and who knows you, and having those relationships. I was going to say like, this is the unfair advantage bootstrappers have, but that's not quite fair because it's more than that. You can't just be a bootstrapper. It's, we've built relationships with people over time, and then we've been able to reach out to those folks, and we've built trust, and they trust us. And, I'm DMing people every single day.
Yeah.
There's certain people I can like there's certain people I can DM, and there's certain people I can't DM. Like I can't DM Elon Musk for advice because he doesn't know who I am. But there is a network of people who I do trust. And I think it's even I'm just of two minds of this right now, because on one hand, I'm like, oh, isn't this great? This thing that bootstrappers have, because, in some of the companies I'd worked for, we would hire a consultant and we didn't know if the consultant knew their stuff. And this is very common in databases, right? Like nobody on the team knows anything about databases. So you bring in a consultant and you're paying them thousands of dollars a day, and, they're in your system, but you don't know what they're doing, and you're just hoping they fix it. You don't know if they're good or not. But in this case, I was positive that Jack was going to know his stuff. I trust him. I've seen his work. I've built a rapport with him behind the scenes. I use his product every day. I just know. I listen to their podcast every week. Like there's just this immersion and this trust and this relationship that make that transaction different. And we would do the same for them. I've given Jack and Paul tons of information about, like what to expect at different stages. And I'm not going to do that for just anybody. And so this is the part I'm a little bit, I just feel bad about talking, because it is kind of the only word I can think of for this is like, it is a bit of a cabal.
Yeah, it is. But
I think maybe instead of apologizing for the cabal, which the reason you have these groups of people in the Laravel community, they call them the Laravel elite. It's like, oh, these are all the people that talk to each other and, know each other and support each other at launch, and they're DMing each other all the time. It's not fair, right? It's like,
that was pretty common in the early like Ruby on Rails days too.
Yeah, and one part of it, we do need to be careful, because if we're shutting other people out constantly, especially underrepresented groups, like if you're a woman and you just cannot get into any of these secret founder groups, that is, we know. Like even that transaction you just did with Jack, like maybe we could have found a consultant and paid $20,000 and fixed the problem. You know what I mean? Like if Jack was going to charge us, maybe that's what he would have charged us. so it is a significant advantage. You didn't just talk to Jack, you talked to some other people you knew in Chicago. You had all of this kind of this cornucopia of people you could talk to, and then you found one person whose situation was similar to what you were talking about, and then
But it sort of goes back to discussion we've had before about the importance of, I don't know if networking is the right word, but it's like building up these relationships over time and just sort of, staying in touch with people. Like, I mean, I sort of agree with you. Like, it is an advantage, but it's also, we've both been doing this for 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. We have a large group of people that we've come in contact with and spent time with and talked to and like worked with, and those networks sort of build out. Like, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so I like lately, I'm of two minds about it, and I think they're both good. I think on one hand, this is something you have to cultivate over time. It's something that you don't just do in a month or 6 months. It's over time, month after month, year after year. You're doing stuff, you're putting it in public, you go to conferences, you meet people, you follow up with people, you engage with people meaningfully online, you do all of the little things that build up to a relationship. And then when you have a bounty of relationships, that can be very helpful, especially if you've built relationships with the right people. On the other hand, I think technology and bootstrapping does have a problem in that it's really easy for white dudes to get together. It's really easy for white dudes to do their private founder retreats together and have their private Slack groups and private Telegram chats and private iMessage groups. And I know female founders that have these as well, and I think that's helpful too. I don't think there's, it's okay for that to exist. But at the same time, I think there are some groups that are underrepresented that wouldn't naturally have an in to those kinds of groups. And I think if you have some privilege, you should also be looking to give a hand up to other people.
Yeah.
And it's messy. Like you and I have been talking publicly about, our desire to fix some of the imbalance that's in tech. And, it means I do get a lot more inbound from people, and it's hard. I'm just a human being, and I have to, I'm trying to figure things out too. But I do think we have a responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
this is a bad conversation. People are for sure. There's some white dudes that are mad right now. I can feel it.
Right. But I mean, personally, I'm not necessarily one to like put myself out there as like to offer help.
Mm-hmm.
Just my personality or whatever. I just get, I don't know. There's a lot there, but having talked to Jack, he just made it like so easy. Like, he was such a good teacher, and
mm-hmm.
I would see the benefit of me personally doing that like more often, right? And just helping someone out who's having a problem.
Yeah. And you could also see how a founder retreat with Paul and Jack would make sense.
Yeah. Right.
Which would be great.
Right.
Like that would be great. The question I'm asking now is I'm like trying to go one more level and going, okay, so yes, like that makes sense for us to have that retreat. How can we make sure it's just not a bunch of white dudes sitting around? Right. And I do understand the frustration that some people have when they're listening to this, which is, you can feel like some of these are like private clubs that you can't get into. And I think, because I felt like that too in the past. And
yeah, absolutely.
Like there's still private clubs I'm not allowed into, right? And there's there's like people I've been trying to impress on the internet forever, and they just want nothing to do with me. I think there's always going to be an element of this, but the idea, and one of my realizations about this was, I don't know if you remember when Chase Reeves was saying this, but he was like, at XOXO, he made a point of saying, okay, listen, like there's all these people, all of our heroes are walking around here and everybody wants a piece of them. He said, let's just focus on our group. Like, let's just think, okay, we're like ground level and we're all in the same place roughly. And we're just going to grow up together.
And it worked out great. But on the other hand, I think one of the Andys was like making fun of us because he's like, you just hang out with yourselves the whole time. It's like, but we're like trying to, build some strong friendships. And
yeah, exactly.
There's also a benefit in that, but it was also a bunch of white dudes. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's mess and problems and things to fix in all of this. But I think the nice thing is that you can look at your peers who are at the same level or people who are slightly ahead of you, and you can start to form those relationships. And I mean, at that time, that first XOXO, I had no idea that, looking back on it now, it's like, wow, like everybody was kind of at an early stage in their career. And since then, everyone really grew, didn't they? Like everybody's gone on to do other things. And so we kind of grew up. That was like our class, like you grow up with your class. And so if you don't have a class yet, I think it's worth finding those folks. And along the way, maybe you get lucky and you get some mentors that are way ahead of you, right? That's great too. But I think finding your class, like Paul and Jack are in our class, you know what I mean? And that a lot of the people I'm DMing were all in the same class. Now, some of them are way richer than I am, but that's fine. Like we're roughly peers, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, and as Marie Poulin tells me lots, she sees both sides of this because she's in all these female entrepreneur groups, and some of them are just killing it. And they're doing different businesses than the very male-dominated bootstrap SaaS space. And she's always like, there needs to be more intermixing between these groups because these female founders know stuff that you dudes are all missing and vice versa as well. And so I think a little bit more of that can be healthy too. We can still have, some male-only retreats and female-only retreats or however you want to do it. But I think having more mixing and, there can be something healthy about that. Oh, feels like we waded into some
that took a different turn than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Because there's like levels to this, right? It's like
Oh, absolutely.
On one hand, yes, and then on the other hand, damn, we've been privileged, and I think it's worth exploring all the mess in there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we've been talking for a while. That's probably a good time to end it, hey?
I think so.
All right, folks, we hope you enjoyed this. John, why don't you thank the good folks on Patreon?
Yeah, thanks to everyone, as always, for supporting us on Patreon. We have Colt Borg, Mark Binder, Anton Zorin, Bill Kondo, Sophia Quintero, Chris Willow, Mason Hensley, Borja Soler, Ward Sandler, Travis Fisher, Matt Buckley, Russell Brown, Evandro Sassi, Pradyumna Schembecker, Noah Prail, Robert Simplicio, Colin Gray, Josh Smith, Brian Ray, Shane Smith, Austin Lovelace, Michael Sitver, Paul Jarvis, and Jack Ellis, my brother Dan Buda, Darby Frey, Samori Augusto, Dave Young, Brad from Canada, Sammy Schukert, Mike Walker, Adam Devander, Dave Junta.
Junta! Junta. I'm not. I just miss that. I miss saying it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen an Instagram post from Junta in a while. What's he doing? Is he taking a break? Did he take a break too?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't been on Instagram in years either.
Oh, we got to figure out.
Maybe he did. I don't know.
Maybe a little summer siesta. All
Probably.
right.
And finally, Kyle Fox from GetRewardful.com.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good summer. And as always, you can find us on Twitter, Build Your SaaS. Show notes are at SaaS.transistor.fm. Whew, man. And
it's been a while.
Yeah.
Gotta get the cobwebs out of your brain.
We'll see you next time we record. See ya.